All right, welcome to your very own personalized deep dive. So it looks like you're getting ready for a clinical research internship.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and we're here to kind of give you all the tools and knowledge you need to absolutely kill it.
It's a field with so much potential. You can actually have an impact on patient care and help push medical advancements forward. It's pretty amazing.
Right, and we'll dive deep into what actually happens in those different phases of a trial and how do you navigate some of the tricky ethical stuff that comes up.
Oh yeah, that's really important.
And what happens when, those unexpected side effects pop up? Like, how do you handle that? Okay, but first things first, let's go back to the basics. Your sample answer for, the classic, why are you interested in this field question. It focuses on your passion for, those medical advancements and wanting that hands-on experience.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like, in the real world?
I think internships are so valuable because they bridge that gap between all that textbook knowledge and what actually happens in practice. You'll see firsthand how evidence-based medicine really shapes those clinical decisions and how research findings actually translate into, helping patients.
It's not just theory, right? It's actually seeing those treatments come to life.
Exactly.
Now, the sample answer also emphasizes researching the organization's specific focus areas.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Okay, picture this. You walk into the interview, and you can actually cite a specific study,
Wow.
something that the organization published, right?
Right?
And then explain how it connects with your interests.
That's impressive.
It shows them you've done your homework
Yeah.
and that you're genuinely interested in what they do.
It's not just any internship for you, right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's break down those essential skills they listed in the sample answer. There's analytical skills, paying attention to detail, data handling, understanding those good clinical practice guidelines, teamwork, and communication. So what would those look like in a real research setting?
Let's take data handling as an example. Keeping really meticulous records. It's not just about being organized. It's about ensuring that the data is accurate.
Yeah.
Imagine a misplaced decimal point in a patient's dosage. That have really serious consequences. And those GCP guidelines, they're there to make sure that every step of the research process is done accurately and ethically.
Right, so those tiny details, they can have a ripple effect on the whole study and even affect patient safety, like you said.
Absolutely.
Speaking of GCP, those guidelines, why do you think those standards are so crucial in the big picture of things?
Let me ask you this. What if a groundbreaking treatment is, hailed as a miracle cure, but then later it's discovered the data was flawed?
Oh, that would be awful.
Right. Not only does it potentially harm patients who may have received an ineffective treatment or even a dangerous one, but it also erodes public trust in medical research. GCP is all about ensuring that research is trustworthy, so every study can genuinely contribute to scientific progress.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the different phases of a clinical trial.
Okay.
The outline kind of describes it as a journey. So it starts with phase 1, which focuses on safety in a small group of healthy people. And then it moves on to phase 2, where it's a larger group of actual patients to see how effective the treatment is and if there are any side effects.
Right.
But phase 3, that's when things get really interesting, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. You're comparing it head-to-head with the current treatments.
Right.
It's really important for showing if this new treatment is actually superior or if it has a unique place in how we treat that condition.
It's got to prove itself, right?
Exactly.
And then there's phase 4, which a lot of people don't talk about as much, right? But it's actually that long-term monitoring after a treatment's been approved.
Right. That's important to make sure it's still safe and effective, even in those real-world settings, outside of a controlled trial.
It's like a relay race. Each phase kind of passes the baton to the next until, boom, we've got a new treatment ready to go.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, the sample answer mentions informed consent. It's defined as making sure participants fully understand the risks, the benefits, all the procedures before they join a trial.
Right, that's important.
But what makes it more than just signing a form? What makes it truly informed consent?
Imagine you're a potential participant and you're handed this huge consent form full of technical jargon. How can you really grasp the risks and benefits if you can't even understand what it's saying?
Right.
It's about clear communication, making sure they feel empowered to ask questions and make a decision without feeling pressured.
So it's about respecting their autonomy, basically.
Exactly.
Participant withdrawal is another crucial thing. The sample answer talks about respecting their decision to leave while still maintaining the study's integrity.
Right.
So what steps are involved when someone decides to leave a trial?
Well, the first and most important thing is to respect their decision without judging them.
Yeah.
And then we need to carefully document their reasons for leaving. That information is actually valuable data. Next, we make sure they get the appropriate follow-up care. And finally, we inform the research team and update all the records to maintain the study's integrity.
It's like finding that balance, right, between individual choice and keeping the study reliable.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to different types of studies. The outline mentions observational and interventional studies, so what's the difference?
Well, think of an observational study like watching a natural event. Researchers are just observing, they're not intervening.
Interesting.
It lets us study how diseases progress in the real world and how people are actually being treated. Interventional studies, on the other hand, they're like controlled experiments. Researchers actively assign treatments to test the specific idea they have, which allows for those more direct comparisons.
It's about using the right tool for the job,
Right.
depending on what you're trying to learn.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about data accuracy.
Yep.
The sample answer lists steps like cross-checking data, following those strict protocols, using standardized entry methods, and doing those regular quality control checks. Why is all of that meticulousness so essential?
Okay, imagine a clinical trial where the data is just like all over the place, inconsistent, full of errors. This compromised data, it could lead to wrong conclusions and actually impact treatment recommendations for millions of people.
Wow.
Data accuracy is crucial, not just for that specific study, but for the entire field.
It's got to be trustworthy, right?
Exactly. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Speaking of sensitive information, how do you ensure confidentiality when you're dealing with all that patient data?
Well, confidentiality, it's more than just locking filing cabinets. It's about having a mindset that respects privacy.
Yeah.
This means things like anonymizing the data, using secure storage systems, and only discussing those sensitive details with authorized personnel.
It's about respecting that trust that participants have placed in us.
Exactly. It's like you're being entrusted with a secret that you need to guard very carefully.
Okay, let's move on to those behavioral questions that often pop up in interviews.
Okay.
These questions try to assess your past experiences and how you've handled different situations. Like, tell me about a time you faced a challenge. How can someone prepare for these kinds of questions?
The key is to think about situations that highlight the skills they're looking for.
Okay.
Have you ever had to work in a team where communication was really tough? Or maybe you had to solve a really complex problem under pressure. By thinking through those experiences beforehand, you'll be ready to showcase your skills.
It's like prepping your arsenal.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be able to tell those stories in a way that's clear and compelling.
Now, let's talk about those tricky situational and ethical questions, the ones that test how you think on your feet.
Ah, yes, those are fun.
Right, and how you make those tough ethical decisions.
Often they'll present you with a hypothetical dilemma like, what would you do if you suspected a colleague of falsifying data?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
These questions, it's not about finding the right answer. It's about demonstrating your understanding of those ethical principles and your commitment to doing what's right for patients and for the research itself.
It's about showing that you can handle pressure and stay ethical even when it's tough.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question for this section. Let's fast forward to the future.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? In the world of clinical research, I mean.
This is your chance to really paint a picture of what you're passionate about. While research is constantly changing, you should demonstrate that you've thought about your career path and how this internship fits into your long-term goals.
Right, so maybe you see yourself specializing in a certain area or leading those clinical trials or even working on the regulatory side of things.
Exactly. It's about showing them that this internship is a stepping stone for you, the beginning of a fulfilling career in clinical research.
It's about showing them that you're serious about this, that it's not just a temporary gig.
Absolutely. It's about showing them you're in it for the long haul. Okay, so we've covered a lot about the internship itself, but let's talk about some real-world scenarios you might encounter.
Yeah, let's get practical. What happens if, you're working on a trial and a participant reports a side effect that wasn't listed in the informed consent document?
That's a good one. That's where your GCP training really kicks in.
Yeah, what do you do?
The first thing is to document everything meticulously.
Right.
The nature of the side effect when it started, how severe it is, all the details.
Add it. So thorough documentation is key.
Absolutely. And then you need to inform the principal investigator or the doctor overseeing the trial.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
They'll need to assess the situation, right?
Exactly. They'll figure out if the side effect is related to the treatment and decide what to do next.
So it's a team effort to make sure the participant gets the right care while still protecting the integrity of the study.
Precisely. Now, let's say your supervisor gives you a task that's a bit outside your comfort zone. Maybe analyzing a complex data set or preparing a presentation for a conference. What do you do?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think a lot of interns would feel intimidated in that situation.
It's all about communication. First, acknowledge their confidence in you and express your enthusiasm for the opportunity to learn something new.
Okay, so show them you're eager to grow, but also be honest about your current skill set, right?
Exactly. If there are any gaps in your knowledge, be upfront about it, and then proactively seek out resources to bridge those gaps.
So maybe attend some training sessions or talk to more experienced colleagues.
That's the idea. And don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions along the way. Your supervisor and colleagues are there to support you.
It's a learning experience after all. Now, what about a situation where you overhear a colleague discussing confidential patient information in public, or maybe you discover that data hasn't been handled properly? What do you do then?
That's where your ethical compass comes in. Remember, you have a responsibility to protect the privacy and well-being of the participants.
It's like a sacred trust, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you witness a breach of confidentiality, try to address it directly with the person involved. Remind them of the importance of privacy.
Okay, so try to handle it internally first.
Right. But if the situation persists or it's a serious violation, you have a duty to report it to your supervisor or the ethics committee.
Sometimes you have to take that step to ensure patient safety and maintain the integrity of your research. Now let's talk about teamwork, which is obviously crucial in research. How do you handle disagreements or challenges that come up when you're collaborating on a project?
Teamwork is all about communication and compromise. When disagreements arise, encourage everyone to express their perspective and actively listen to understand their point of view.
So create a space for open and respectful dialogue.
Exactly. Focus on finding common ground. And remember, you're all working towards the same goal.
It's about the bigger picture, right? Not about winning an argument.
That's right. When it comes to coordinating tasks and meeting deadlines, setting clear expectations from the start can prevent a lot of headaches.
So having a project plan with roles and responsibilities clearly defined can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to seek guidance from your supervisor if you encounter roadblocks or need help resolving conflicts.
They're there to help you navigate those tricky situations. Now let's talk about time management, which can be a real challenge in a research internship.
Yep.
How do you recommend staying organized and on top of everything?
Prioritization is key. At the beginning of each week, take some time to assess your tasks and deadlines and decide which ones are the most urgent or important.
Okay, so make a plan and stick to it.
Exactly. And break those tasks down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
That can make them feel less overwhelming, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the power of tools like calendars, to-do lists, and project management software.
Those can be lifesavers. Now, what about communication skills? I imagine those are pretty crucial for a researcher, especially when you're presenting complex findings to different audiences.
You're absolutely right. When it comes to communicating research findings, clarity is key. Avoid using jargon or technical terms that your audience might not understand, and always be prepared to answer questions and provide further explanations.
It's about making your research accessible to everyone, right?
Exactly. And remember, communication is a two-way street. Be a good listener and be open to feedback.
It's a dialogue, not a monologue. Now let's talk about problem solving, which is something every researcher needs to be good at. How do you approach those inevitable obstacles and setbacks that crop up during a study?
When you hit a roadblock, don't panic. Take a step back and clearly define the problem. What are the specific symptoms? What are the potential causes?
Okay, so start by getting a clear picture of the situation.
Right. And then you can start brainstorming solutions. Don't be afraid to think outside the box and consider unconventional approaches.
So it's about being creative and persistent.
Exactly. Once you've generated some potential solutions, you can evaluate them based on feasibility impact and alignment with the study's goals.
It's about making strategic decisions based on the available information. Now let's shift gears and talk about career progression. Imagine you're in an interview and they ask about your long-term goals in clinical research. How do you answer that question in a way that showcases both ambition and realism?
It's a chance to share your passion for the field and talk about the specific areas that interest you most. You could mention potential career paths like specializing in a particular therapeutic area, leading clinical trials, or working on the regulatory side.
So it's about showing them you've thought about your future and how this internship fits into your bigger plan.
Exactly. And remember, research is a dynamic field. Your goals might evolve as you gain more experience, so be open to new possibilities and emphasize your commitment to continuous learning.
It's about showing them you're in it for the long haul. Now let's dive into the interview process itself. Any tips for making a lasting impression on those interviewers?
First impressions are everything. Make sure you arrive on time, dress professionally, and greet the interviewer with a firm handshake and a genuine smile.
So those nonverbal cues really do matter.
Absolutely. During the interview, maintain eye contact,
Yeah.
listen attentively, and answer questions thoughtfully and concisely.
It's about projecting confidence and engagement.
Exactly. And don't forget to let your personality shine through. Share your passion for research and what makes you unique.
It's about showing them who you are as a person and as a potential colleague. Now let's talk about those tricky interview questions, like being asked about your weaknesses or past experiences that didn't go as planned.
When asked about a weakness, choose one that's not directly related to the core requirements of the internship, and frame it as an area you're actively working on improving.
Okay, so turn a potential negative into a positive by showcasing your self-awareness and growth mindset.
Exactly. And when it comes to past experiences that didn't go as planned, focus on the lessons you learned and how you've applied those lessons to improve your skills.
It's about showing that you can learn from your mistakes. Now, what about networking? How important is it for aspiring researchers, and how do you recommend going about it?
Networking is incredibly valuable. Attend industry events, connect with people on LinkedIn, reach out to professionals for informational interviews.
So be proactive and put yourself out there.
Absolutely. And remember, networking is a two-way street. Be willing to offer help and support to others.
It's about building those mutually beneficial relationships. Now let's talk about salary and benefits. It's a topic that can be awkward to bring up in an interview. How do you recommend approaching it?
It's best to focus on expressing your enthusiasm for the position and what you hope to learn. Avoid bringing up salary and benefits unless the interviewer initiates the conversation.
So let them take the lead on that one. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about personal well-being. The demands of a research internship can be intense. How do you recommend maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
It's crucial to prioritize your physical and mental health. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, exercising regularly, and making time for activities you enjoy.
It's about taking care of yourself so you can be the best researcher you can be.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed.
Now let's talk about mentorship, which can be incredibly valuable for someone starting out in their career. How do you recommend finding and nurturing those mentor relationships?
Look for professionals you admire. Attend networking events and join professional organizations. Reach out to people whose work you respect and ask for informational interviews.
So be proactive and seek out those individuals who can offer guidance and support.
Exactly. And remember, mentorship is a two-way street. Be a good listener, ask thoughtful questions, and express your gratitude for their time and insights.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship. Now let's talk about personal branding, which is becoming increasingly important in today's digital age.
Yeah.
What are your tips for building a strong online presence?
Create a professional LinkedIn profile. Keep your resume updated, and consider building a personal website or portfolio to showcase your skills and experience.
It's about creating a digital footprint that highlights your unique qualifications.
Exactly. And remember, personal branding is an ongoing process. Continuously seek opportunities to learn and grow and share your expertise with others.
It's about showcasing your passion and commitment to the field. Now let's talk about giving back to your community. How do you recommend finding opportunities to make a positive impact beyond your professional life?
Volunteering is a great way to give back. Find an organization that aligns with your values and dedicate some of your time and skills to their mission.
It's about using your talents to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. Now let's talk about celebrating your successes. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind, but it's important to take time to acknowledge your accomplishments and appreciate how far you've come.
It's about giving yourself credit for your hard work and dedication.
Exactly. Celebrate those milestones, big or small. Share your successes with loved ones and reward yourself for your efforts.
It's about recognizing your achievements and staying motivated. Now let's talk about something that's often seen as a negative, but can actually be a valuable learning experience: embracing failure. How do you recommend reframing setbacks and challenges in a positive light?
When you encounter a setback, don't get discouraged. Instead, analyze what went wrong, learn from your mistakes, and adjust your approach for next time.
So it's about turning failures into learning opportunities.
Exactly. Remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to it.
It's all part of the journey. Now let's talk about something that's essential for a fulfilling career following your passion. How do you recommend finding and pursuing work that truly lights you up?
Take some time to reflect on what truly interests you. What are you curious about? What problems do you want to solve? What impact do you want to make in the world?
So it's about figuring out what makes you tick.
Exactly. Once you have a better understanding of your passions, you can start exploring career paths that align with those interests.
It's about creating a career that's both personally and professionally rewarding. Now let's talk about work-life balance, which is crucial for a sustainable and fulfilling career. How do you recommend finding that sweet spot between your work and your personal life?
It's all about setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care. Make sure you're taking time for yourself to relax, recharge, and pursue activities you enjoy outside of work.
It's about creating a life that's balanced and fulfilling.
Exactly. Now let's talk about continuous learning, which is essential in any field, but especially in a fast-paced area like clinical research. How do you recommend staying ahead of the curve? Make a commitment to lifelong learning. Read industry publications, attend conferences and workshops, take online courses, and seek out opportunities to expand your knowledge and skills.
So it's about being curious and proactive in your pursuit of knowledge.
Exactly. Now let's talk about feedback, which can be a valuable tool for growth and improvement. How do you recommend approaching feedback in a way that allows you to learn and develop? Be open to feedback from all sources, your supervisor, colleagues, mentors, and even participants. View feedback as an opportunity to learn and grow.
It's about having a growth mindset and being willing to learn from your mistakes. Now let's talk about self-promotion, which can be a bit uncomfortable for some, but is essential for career advancement. How do you recommend showcasing your accomplishments without feeling like you're bragging?
It's not about bragging. It's about sharing your successes and letting your work speak for itself. Highlight your accomplishments in your resume and cover letter during interviews and in performance reviews.
So it's about being confident in your abilities and showcasing your value to the organization.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and dive into some questions designed to assess your understanding of research ethics.
Okay, bring on the ethical dilemmas.
All right. Imagine you're working on a trial and you notice a potential conflict of interest involving a member of the research team. It could be something like a financial stake in the company, developing the study drug, or maybe a personal relationship with one of the participants. How would you handle that situation?
That's a tough one. It's important to protect the integrity of the research, but you also want to be sensitive to the individuals involved.
You're right. It's a delicate situation. The first step is to gather all the relevant information. Make sure you understand the nature and extent of the potential conflict of interest and document everything carefully.
So be thorough and objective in your assessment.
Exactly. Then talk to your supervisor or the ethics committee. They can guide you on the appropriate course of action.
It's a good reminder that even as an intern, you have a responsibility to speak up if you see something that could compromise the ethical conduct of the research.
Absolutely. Now let's say you're reviewing a research protocol and you notice a potential issue with the informed consent process. Maybe the language is too technical for participants to understand, or the risks and benefits aren't clearly explained. What would you do?
Informed consent is so important. I'd want to make sure participants are fully informed before making a decision about participating in the study.
Exactly. If you see any red flags in the informed consent process, document your concerns clearly and then discuss them with your supervisor or the principal investigator.
So it's about being proactive and advocating for the rights of the participants. Now let's talk about a scenario that often sparks a lot of debate, the use of placebo controls. Imagine you're working on a trial for a new treatment, and the protocol involves a placebo control group. Some people argue that it's unethical to withhold potentially life-saving treatment, while others believe that placebo controls are necessary for scientific rigor. What are your thoughts on this complex ethical issue?
It's definitely a challenging issue with no easy answers. The decision to use a placebo control should always be carefully considered, taking into account the potential benefits and risks for participants, as well as the scientific validity of the study.
So it's about finding that balance between scientific rigor and patient well-being.
Precisely. And it's crucial that participants in the placebo group are fully informed about the nature of the control and the potential implications for their treatment.
Transparency is key. They need to understand that they might not receive the active treatment and that their condition might not improve or could even worsen during the study. Now let's move on to another ethically sensitive topic, The recruitment of vulnerable populations in research. This includes groups like children, pregnant women, individuals with cognitive impairments, and those from marginalized communities. What are some of the ethical considerations that come into play when recruiting from these groups? It's important to protect these individuals from harm and exploitation and ensure that their participation in research is truly voluntary.
Absolutely. When recruiting from vulnerable populations, we need to be extra cautious about informed consent, making sure that participants or their legal guardians fully understand the risks and benefits and that they're not being coerced or unduly influenced.
So there needs to be that extra layer of protection in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We also need to involve community representatives and advocates to make sure the research is designed and conducted in a way that's culturally sensitive and respectful of the needs of the target population.
It's about engaging with the community and ensuring that their voices are heard. Now let's talk about data sharing and privacy, which is becoming increasingly important as research becomes more collaborative and data-driven. How do we balance the need to share data to advance scientific progress with the need to protect the privacy of research participants?
It's all about striking that delicate balance. We need to de-identify data as much as possible, use secure storage methods, and obtain informed consent from participants for data sharing.
And be transparent with participants about how their data will be used and who will have access to it.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the role of animal models in research, which is often a subject of ethical debate. What are your thoughts on navigating the ethical considerations surrounding animal research? I think it's important to acknowledge the valuable contributions animal research has made to scientific and medical advancements. However, we also have a responsibility to minimize the use of animals in research and ensure that they're treated humanely.
So it's about finding that balance between scientific progress and animal welfare.
Precisely. We should always strive to replace animal models with alternative methods whenever possible, reduce the number of animals used in research, and refine our experimental procedures to minimize any potential pain or distress.
And ensure that any facilities using animal models meet the highest standards of care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's about constantly evaluating our methods and making sure we're doing the best we can for those animals. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about something a little more personal. How to prepare for those behavioral interview questions. You know, the ones where they ask you to describe a time you faced a challenge or demonstrated a particular skill.
Yeah, those can be tricky. How do you recommend tackling those?
The best approach is to have a few stories ready to go.
Hmm.
Think about times when you had to solve a problem, work effectively in a team, handle a difficult situation, and practice telling those stories using the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result.
So it's like having a toolbox of examples you can pull from to showcase your skills?
Exactly. And remember to tailor your stories to the specific skills and qualities they're looking for in the internship.
Makes sense. Now, what about those ethical dilemma questions where there's no clear right or wrong answer? How do you approach those?
Those questions are designed to see how you think critically and how you apply ethical principles to complex situations. There's no magic formula, but the key is to demonstrate that you've thought about the issues and can articulate a well-reasoned perspective.
So it's about showing them you can handle those gray areas and make thoughtful decisions even when there's no easy answer.
Exactly. It's about showcasing your judgment and your commitment to ethical conduct. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've talked a lot about the technical aspects of clinical research. But remember, at its core, this field is all about people.
It's about using our skills and knowledge to improve the lives of patients and contribute to a healthier future for everyone.
Exactly. So as you embark on this internship journey, remember to stay curious, keep learning, and never lose sight of that human connection.
That's a great reminder. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. It's been an incredibly informative and inspiring conversation.
It's been my pleasure. And to everyone listening out there, best of luck on your clinical research journey.
We're excited to see what you accomplish.